Hello, dear friends, and welcome to episode 3 of Living in the Flow, Farewell to Illusion. It is a monthly webinar, it's a monthly live stream that Tania and I love to share with you. Now, we have been playing with times a little bit, and I have checked the time and I can see that there are people who have logged in, and it's also, we're going live on Facebook. But for some reason, we are missing Tania. So she hasn't checked in yet. She hasn't logged in yet. So I hope she hasn't missed the time. But we will just keep going with this episode and see what happens. These days, things are like this. We just have to go with the flow. Whatever happens, it happens. And we just so-called roll with it. So again, welcome to this monthly show. And before we go into, I would like to, mention just to please check out the website for all of the things that I do. Check out both of our websites for all of the things that each of us do. So on my website, there are a number of things coming up, and I will be putting up more courses, some 1-hour classes as well. And there's a 3-month class coming up in September with 2 live webinars with Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, and I am really looking forward to that one. There are still 4 spaces left on that course, so there are limited spaces. I sort of normally go with number 33. It seems like a really cool number, and we can work really intimately and closely in those kind of courses. And it is about, it's called the 3-month journey. It's called the Essence, your Christ consciousness. It's all about your Christ consciousness, about allowing it, about recognizing it, about feeling it, about bringing it forth into your daily life. And I used to do this class with Yeshua. So he was channeling through me, but now Mary Magdalene will be doing it for the first time. There are plans available to 3-part payments for those of you that want to want to do it in this way. There also is a discount for those that join the masterclass, the Master Space monthly membership place, where I do regular heartbeat articles on the energies that are happening, on what I'm experiencing. If that it can assist you, that is for $33 a month, and you get 20% off all of the other classes. And you also get a live webinar when we've had webinars by Mary Magdalene, by Michael, Saint Germain. So all of the people, all of the beings, non-physical beings that I work with, participate in that. And also then you also have access to a library, to many 1-hour classes that I did in the past, and also the live monthly webinar also goes into the library. So check that out, because if you want to do it for a month, and if you don't like it, you can always cancel, and you still get that 30-day access to everything. So that would be before we go into it, because we always forget to go through these things. So still there is no Tania. So she got lost. Maybe she's gone into another dimension. As I mentioned before, we have been playing with the times. So maybe she perhaps got mixed up the times, but I will just keep looking and see if she does join us. Also, I would like to, as I said, point out that for those of you that are interested in photography, there's also some of the photos on my website that I do sell. And those are meant, they're not like really photos as in a no, like just to sell the photos, but it's meant for those people that want to contribute and as an energy exchange, and also want some kind of a physical reminder that you get. So that's the purpose of those photos, and they do come on photo print. And also they may take a while to get there, because with COVID, there have been delays in the mail, and also normally the photo comes first to me and I sign it and I wrap it up and then I send it out to you. So please check that out for those of you that want to contribute. And also I can see we've still got people coming in. And again, I would like to say that for some reason we have lost Tania somewhere along the way. So I will keep checking whether she is coming, and I will then make sure that she can connect with the sound and the video as well. Okay, so, all right, let's come into this space. Let's come into this safe space of being real, of reality. There is so much out there that is the world of the dream. And what is this world of the dream? The dream is the world of the thought. The world of the thought, the world of the mind is a dream world, for it is not real. It does feel extremely real because we get so engrossed with it, and it has such strong boundaries all around it that keeps a person in. And not only that, then it has mass consciousness also that uses every possible way to keep people within the confines of that mind. But it is a dream world. And when you first start realizing that that is a dream world, it is quite shocking. And as a human being, you have to get used to so many different things. Because when you step out of the mind, all of a sudden you realize just how much more there is to yourself. And not only that, just how vast this beingness is, not only the multi-dimensions, but all those other beings that are within that space. And for many of us, we're familiar with some of those beings because we work with them. For example, Michael, Saint Germain, Yeshua, Mary Magdalene. When you leave that dream world of the mind, that box of the mind, all of a sudden you become so aware of all these other things. There is so much more than what a person is used to. That in some ways, like if you don't have that maturity, if we don't go through the awakening process, and if all of those experiences that we experienced before we are actually able to perceive this greater world, the real world, who you really are, all the different parts of yourself. If we didn't go through that time of cleansing or that time of integrating, that time of maturing, we wouldn't actually be ready to be able to really deal with that. And there are many, many mental health issues that have to do with people becoming aware of these worlds before they are ready, before they are mature, before they are spiritually mature and ready to perceive those things. And then they get all sorts of different mental health conditions because they have no idea what's happening. They may even be meeting the dark aspects, because those are the loudest. And so for many of those people, this experience of being real can be hellish. And this is very odd when you think that the world of the mind is actually just a dream. And the human self, well, actually, it's the soul who is the dreamer. And it is very poetic and it's very beautiful when you look at it from this kind of poetic way. The soul is dreaming you. The soul is dreaming through the mind, and then woof, you wake up and you awaken and you integrate and you expand into the realness, into being the real you. And in that world, after you do all your initial cleansings and after you do all the processes that each of us are very, very familiar with, you meet your soul. You become very, very familiar with this part of yourself. And so how do I perceive this, my soul? Because this is one of those biggest, let's say, jumps for a person to jump into. is how do you perceive this soul? And many people have all these different words that they use, and we're not going to get caught on the spiritual correctness, because there comes a time in every person's journey where all the rules and all the spiritual correctness falls away and there are no more rules, and you can just express yourself. You can call bits and pieces of yourself whatever you want. You can call it higher self, your soul. You can give it a name, and the name, the song that it sings. When you're ready, you'll hear that as well. And so this soul, for example, I call this part of myself Mikael. And so Mikael is a he and a she. And yes, here we are Mikael. And we greet you and we welcome you as well into this delicious sensual space, into this safe space. We greet you into your now moment where you can meet us as well, even though perhaps we are not your oversoul, so to speak. You can meet us because we are a character that we like people. We love chatting. We love interacting. We love chatting with you. We don't use the words. But when you step out of the mind, absolutely, you can meet us. And so how? Now, Alexis again. So how do I perceive this soul, or I am that I am? It can be in many, many different ways. For this is that thing that where are no rules, and it matters only what you experience and how you experience, and it changes. It goes through so many different stages. Initially, you get all these rose-colored glasses, and it's just beautiful. It's just that when you fall in love for the first time, gosh, and you just, it's like you're flying. And then you go into the nitty gritty and you go into the release. And the more you feel your soul, of course, the more release happens, because the presence of your soul, its radiance, the presence of Mikael always would stir things within me. So it was that kind of push and pull, because on one hand, my human self wanted so much to be part of it, so much to be connected. And on the other hand, part of it always knew that the deeper I go in connection, the more I will have to change, the more I will have to release, the more I will have to be able to expand. Because the presence, when you feel this greater part of yourself, it requires like that your senses, your feelings, they need a lot of room to move within you, and they also need a lot of room to move on the outside of you, because that presence is just so grand. And it's kind of like all of a sudden, initially it feels like all of a sudden you become an elephant. And I don't mean that in a funny way, okay, maybe in a humorous way, but it's just like all of a sudden you realize that everything that you are is so much bigger. So you can't move so swiftly, so fast, so boom, boom, it all just expands and becomes slower. It feels like it's becoming slower because you are vibrating higher with that presence. And then at other times, for example, if I am feeling as a human self, like I've just been dealing with mass consciousness or something like that, I can connect with this warm glow, with this warm radiance that is inside my solar plexus, or that's around where it feels like. At other times, this presence that I connect with goes through the heart, and it's just this warm, and you just and it's just this being. It feels to me sometimes as a being that just is there and is radiating. It is radiating this most incredible, mesmerizing energy. And I, as a human self, I can just bask in it. And I don't, when I do these things on my own, I don't call things, oh, I'm the human self. It is just, I'm explaining my inner experiences and using human words to explain what is really, really hard to explain, because the experiences are sometimes without words, that there aren't no words to explain it. Okay, so I've checked, and Tania is still not present, so we'll keep going. Okay, and so I experience it as this glow, and this glow is always present, but as a human self, I don't always feel it. Sometimes it can be a bit more difficult and takes more breathing to feel, to start feeling that glow, and then for that glow to spread through me. Sometimes if you are integrating some huge, ancient, gigantic aspect, challenging aspect, it may be challenging for a while before you can feel that. Or if you get sucked into the mass consciousness, within mass consciousness, it is impossible to feel that, because it's kind of like the mass consciousness creates that barrier, because mass consciousness says, no, you don't have a soul. If you have a soul, there's no way you can feel it. There's no way you can understand it. There's no way you can touch it. There's no way that you can bask in its presence. And then at other times, for example, let's say at the moment, if I feel, okay, I want to feel the presence of Michael, I can just expand my awareness just out and out and out, and there I can feel him there, the start of his full-on radiance, and I can keep expanding. I can have a different perspective, and I can become Michael. And then here we are, Michael, and then our presence, our perspective expands even more, because now we are speaking as Michael, as that grand being. And it is not grand as in greater than the human self, because our human self, we as a human self are whole, just as we as Michael, the non-physical being, are whole. You see, there is no difference. It is just a difference. There is no difference in value. There is just a difference of perspective. And so when you are in this greater perspective, and again, we're just using words that are limited. From here, you have this grand view, and you have a bigger view, and not only that, you can feel other beings present, because we interact with all these other beings, other souls. But we know ourselves from this perspective. We can feel ourselves in all the thousands and thousands of lives and lifetimes, in all the thousands of scents, smells, tastes, sounds that are happening as we speak at the moment. They are happening, they are alive. And we are in no way confused. We are in no way confused. We absolutely know what is what, who is who within us. And then Alex again, and I am here, and I can step into it. And when I am more focused into this human self, I can perceive things a little bit denser. And in this way, it is very, very useful when I am denser and I'm more focused. I'm not so focused on the grandest scheme of things, because some of the things require me for this kind of focus. For example, let's say if I'm working with a computer, or something like that, you see. So if I am in that greater part of myself, it is very, very hard to sort of focus on the little clicks and things. So each and every part of ourselves has its own place, has its own being, has its own validity, has its own truth. And all the truths are real. So you see how you can have many, many truths. So for example, if I look at something and I taste something. And from my human self perspective, or for example, let's say if I'm cooking, try this with your own soul, with the presence of your soul. When I'm cooking, and if I'm cooking as a human self, like if I step out of that greater presence, then I know, okay, I put a bit of this and a bit of that and get the water to boil and all of these kind of things. It becomes very practical. Now, if I allow Mikhail to be present, then all of a sudden, not only that it's all very practical, it becomes extremely interesting from a different point of view. For being the great chemist, the scientist, all of a sudden, the boiling tomato sauce becomes a chemistry lab. And all of a sudden, I look at all these bubbles and I see all these chemical reactions and all these processes, and perhaps even sacred geometry. All of these kind of things just in a pot of boiling tomato sauce. You see, so there are so, and which one is true? Is this a chemistry experiment? Yes. Is this cooking dinner? Yes. You see, so there are so many levels and layers of things. Like, for example, like at the moment, what is going on in the world? The shadow integration of shadow self. So you can look at that, for example, from so many different levels, and all of them are true. So it's not wrong. For example, for someone who is just starting, they perhaps want to become aware that they have a shadow, that they have a darker side, if they were only on the light. For someone else, perhaps they saw themselves as a villain. All of a sudden, they realize they have good parts in themselves, you see. So this is absolutely right for where they are. There is no need to go into different kind of levels. And then, yes, of course, then comes a time when you step out of that, but you still have parts that are playing within that. Because remember, you still are physical, you still can play within the mass consciousness, so you keep in touch with that part. But now you also have a greater view. You step out of that game altogether and you see it's all both just one coin, different sides. So your view from here is different again. So for example, if someone is talking to a group of people that are at this space, that's the truth. You see, so battling and trying to convince people becomes nonsensical at a certain stage, because you see it's all perfect. And this is where the perfection of things comes in. And it is not that perfection of the mind, it is perfection of things which are perfect as they are, wherever they are. It is that all is well in the creation, because all is well in the creation. So what are the benefits of this being real when you say farewell to the illusion of the dream that is so real? And yet it is not, it is only but one perspective, the perspective of the mind that thinks it's limited. A perspective of the mind that has experiences with its own soul, with this vastness of being, is very different. And the mind has a very, very good, strong role, because you couldn't be physical. There's a lot of physical things within the physical reality that the mind needs to be able to do. So we don't put down the mind. We don't belittle the mind. You would not be able to function. And yet its role changes, for it is no longer the boss. It is no longer the definer, the judge of you. Your real you becomes the alpha, the omega, which means A to Z and everything in between. You become the definer. You become the judge of everything. And the judge meaning not in a way that the mind has judged things, but meaning that you decide what is important to you, how you perceive things, what perspective you want to take, how you want to look at things, how you want to relate to things. You see, because, and this is such a huge difference, because within the world of the mind, within the world of humanity, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to wait for some outer authority to decide for you. For example, you give all the authority to science. And once the great science confirms something, wow, now it must be true, you see. But when you are outside of that dream, outside of that illusion, you yourself are the definer. You yourself decide what is meaningful to you, what is real to you, what is true to you. And when you can realize yourself in this way, and you see your history, you see your path as it was, you then find yourself that you allow others to just be who they are, because they too are a souled being. So I'm talking about this so much today because it's this illusion, this illusion is become so painful for so many. And it is so easy to be caught in that illusion. It is so easy to believe that illusion because that pull of mass consciousness is just so strong. It's so seductive. And if you live close to people as we are, you know, we're not living somewhere in the cave. We do take time for ourselves, but you have to constantly over and over and over and over again cleanse yourself. Cleanse yourself of errors. That's what I call it, of errors, of erroneous beliefs that try to insert themselves between me and my soul. You see, because you can quickly believe, very quickly believe that the subtleties of your soul are not true, because there's all these other things that are saying they are not true, you see. So in this way, even it's important to have in some ways a strong ego in this way, because you need to be able to stand with yourself as yourself. Even perhaps nobody around you believes what you believe. And it's not that you actually believe that. That would be an erroneous word again, because you know it. Once you experience it, you know it. It's not anymore belief. It's not faith. It's not hope. You don't need any of those words anymore once you know it, once you experience it. And so that's why the experience is the queen and the king in this way. Because once you experience it, it is very hard for that mass consciousness to pull the veil over your face, and more importantly, to pull the veil in between you and your soul. For isn't this that veil, that big veil that everyone talks about? You see this side and that side, or the side of the living, like they used to say, and for majority of people, this is true. There is the side of the living, and the side of the dead is all but a mystery. And this is that's where it is. It is that veil, the veil. And it was done on purpose. It was done on purpose by you as a soul. It was done on purpose for the experience. At the same time, we didn't know, we've never went into this experience. We didn't know how deep into it we're going to go, what is going to happen, what the experiences that we're going to have. So we got a bit stuck in it, and we experienced much more of things that were no need to experience as much of things like suffering, things like extreme victimhood, professional victimhood. You see, but no matter, we are here, we are, and we're changing everything. So it is always this veil between the physical and the non-physical, because before they were separated, and now it is that veil. Well, or not now, it always was between the human self and the soul self. So when you actually experience it being gone or melted or thinned out, or however you want to experience it or say it, you see, it is this that mass consciousness then constantly then wants to insert, that it is between you being able to feel, perceive, experience, and touch your soul self. Touch that radiance, touch that glow. And it is not only, and it is very challenging, of course, to be integrating your soul. That's why it's taking so many years, because everything impure does have to go, because you have to change so much as a human self. You have to be able to flow. You have to be able to see the illusion. You have to be able to let things go. You have to keep letting things go. There are so many new skills that you learn throughout this process. You see, to be able to be in touch, to be able to live without that veil, that division between this world and that world. And as a human, and there's a human self in all of our history and fairy tales and tales and movies, and all of that is based on that veil being there, is based on the other side being unknown and unknowable. And so when you are allowing your interaction with the soul self, you then that's it. You pretty much have died, really, in many ways, like in the old ways, because all of a sudden you're in touch with the other side. The other side is no longer a mystery. It is no longer scary, because you realize that the other side is actually the real world. And that what you thought was real is a dream world. The dream of the thinker, the dream of the mind, the dream of the thought. That's the dream world. And so when you have this, when you marry these two sides, all of a sudden you realize that the other side, like I mentioned before, is very different than what we imagined. It's very different. It's not scary. It's actually, that's where all the amazing creativity lives. That's where you have all these amazing support to get through these difficult times, because not only that you have this continual access to this radiance, that radiates through you, that radiates health, that radiates well-being, that radiates joy, that you can experience these, but it also gives you different perspectives. It also helps you with all the different skills, like being behind the short wall, looking at things as soul beings rather than the victims, looking at looking at people as soul beings rather than the victims. That changes, and you have much easier. It's not 100% easy, because no one wants to see people suffer, other beings suffer. It's not, but I'm more emphasizing the things that work. You see, because it is these things that help each one of you then to keep making the choice to stay, and you have to often make that choice. It does come up quite again and again and again, because now that you are familiar with what the other side is the dead, the side of the dead, which is actually not zombies like the movies portray, but is actually incredible array, incredible variety of live beings. That's where all our friends, non-physical friends, live, and all of those that have moved on. And more majority of who we are lives in the world of the dead, so to speak. You see the whole joke of this. There is often you giggle at how, as a person within the box of the mind, how silly the beliefs really are, how silly, how distorted that reality really is. And when you're walking in the world, this is what you do continually experience. You do continually experience just how silly the world is, that world of the box, when you actually are looking from this kind of perspective. You see, so now that that veil that we talked about is actually within you. It's within every cell. So as you melt it and you become, then you're not the non-physical side of your non-physical part of yourself becomes available to you. Then you're flying through these times. And as I said, yes, there are times when you feel the suffering of the world, the fear of the world, and yet you have the abilities to deal with that in a completely different way. You have the abilities to allow these things, the worst things that you can imagine, not that you imagine them, but perhaps you see them in the news that people are doing to each other. You can allow them to flow through you, and you transform them, and they get touched by love as never before. And this is the magic, and this is the amazing part of you, each and every one of you, allowing yourself, choosing to be present here in the world of staying. This is what you do. You are that magician that is changing suffering into gold. It is not always an easy job, but it is what you're doing, and you're doing it so naturally. And I know that our non-physical friends are amazed at us, at what we are doing and what we have achieved. And I just would like to portray that so that each one of you can feel and be amazed at who you are, what a master you are, even though it is very challenging in today's world to always feel a master, because the mass consciousness has become very, very strong. And yet we have made it flexible. We are continually inputting our experiences, our new experiences into it that are available then as potentials to every other human being who is connected, plugged into that mass consciousness. And so back to this real world and illusion, something very wonderful happens then with this when you become integrated. Even the world that before was an illusion, that was only a dream, that world of the thought, of the box of the mind, it expands. The walls melt, and all of a sudden, even that becomes much, much more real. And you become much more able to be firmly planted in it, firmly on the ground, firmly in the earthly experiences, and yet at the same time, so incredibly ethereal and etheric. And this is just it's amazing to experience that, because even though before it was an illusion, all of a sudden somehow, because your soul, you as a soul have embodied within it, all of a sudden this physical world is not just a thought, but all of a sudden it becomes real. It becomes material. And it's hard to explain that, but it is a definite experience. And your body knows it, and your senses know it, and other beings know it. Animals, birds, they know it, the plants. They know there is something different about you. They feel your presence, they feel the presence of your soul. So everything, but everything reacts very, very differently to you. And everything in this way becomes extremely easy, so incredibly easy. It's like you change that procrastination. You change that procrastination, and you allow yourself to do some things that perhaps you procrastinated with, and all of a sudden you realize how easy they are, how easy dealing and navigating within this physical world is for you when you embody your soul self. All of a sudden you have these new skills you never knew you had. And all of a sudden you are able to just do it. Some things that perhaps you feared in the past, all of a sudden they're just extremely easy. And all of a sudden you enjoy being in the physical. Because for many, many, many of us, whether due to the circumstances of this life or the life, the energy used to be so dense, so thick, it was intolerable, whether it was, whether to certain experiences within this life. We have been very disconnected. Many of us have been very disconnected from life, from body, from yourself, from your life. And so when you embody, when the soul is descending into your body, everything then really for the first time becomes real. And you think, wow, where have I been for all this time? What was that before that I called my life, before my soul was embodied? It just becomes even unthinkable anymore. And very often you forget what it felt like unless you speak perhaps with another human being who is still, and then you remember what it was like to be so disconnected, to be so fearful, to live in that illusion. And it is living in that illusion, in that dream, the disconnected dream, that truly is fearful, because the mind just doesn't know anything about anything, and it can't. And especially now, because the energy has changed so much, the world has changed, your energy is now accommodating you as an embodied master. So it would be much harder to do this, like 30, 40, 50 years ago, because the energy was very, very different then. It was almost intolerable for some people. And so people that, for example, that used to channel, they very often got sick in those days, or their lives were could be very short, because there was just such a discrepancy between the energies and between what was possible to say. And so, again, we've gone through a number of different things in the last decade, and now we find ourselves, because more and more people are open to so-called the other side, more and more people are channeling, because the real world is vast. The real world has got loads in it, a lot of life, a lot of dimensions, a lot of different beings that want to connect, that are connecting. So there are more and more people channeling so-called galactic things. And yes, it may not be, once you get to a certain place, a lot of things are no more relevant. You come to a place where it is you that needs to be then really aware and discerning what is, like we talked before, all of those different perspectives and layers. So For someone, it may not, it perhaps is not that they are, channeling incorrectly. It's just that their audience is different. It is like, for example, for me, I look at it because sometimes I notice that people are perhaps really putting down certain teachers or certain channeled material. And yes, certain things are definitely not good, so we're not talking about that. But I'm talking about that, it with the being that is being channeled, just because they are channeling to beginners and they're using those beginner language doesn't mean that the being is in that level. I liken it to, for example, let's say when you look at someone who's teaching 7-year-old kids, maybe grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, they're not using the same language that the teacher is using, a professor is using, that is teaching at university. And that is completely logical. So it's the same with the channeled material, that, like, there is respect there for those beings that choose to work with beginners, and they will use the different kind of language. For example, a lot of people are still channeling Archangel Michael or other archangels, and they're using very different language. It is not because, Michael doesn't know different things of our so-called higher, more masterful things, but it is because that audience doesn't understands that language. And then when individuals are ready, they will then graduate and go to different levels or different classes. So you see, there's so much more happening, and there's so much more that you can become aware as you allow your awareness to expand. And so you let go of a lot of the judgments, but you become much more discerning, and you make your own mind, and you make your own opinions of things. And now I'm going to, for those people that have come a bit later, we don't know what's happened to our dear Tania. We have changed the time, so maybe she's missed the time, or hopefully everything is okay with her, but she still hasn't come in or logged in. So we'll keep going. All right, so before, I also forgot to mention, if anybody has any questions, there is a panel at the bottom and you can ask some questions. If you're logged in as Zoom, I won't be able to look at questions on Facebook today because I am by myself, so that it becomes too distracting to be clicking and bringing the mind back in so closely. Okay, so tomorrow is full moon again. It's a blue moon because it's a full moon again in the astrological sign of Aquarius. The last full moon was in 1 degree Aquarius. This full moon is in the last degree of Aquarius, I think 29 point something. And that's why it's called blue moon, once in a blue moon, because it's quite rare. Normally you have each full moon, it's in the next sign. And now, talking about Aquarius, so who's the master of Aquarian age? Our dear Saint Germain. So he wanted to have a few words as well today. And so, yes, let me see if I can find some more space in this body. Today it is a bit crowded, is it not? Yes, it is. Your dear friend, Saint Germain. And I greet each and every one of you. I greet each and every one of you who are participating today or who might be watching this later. But is this not fun? Is this not fun? Or what do you say to all the crazy things that are happening in the world? You have prepared. You have prepared for these times very well. And you know that I've been with you and I've been teaching each and every one of you. I've been working with you. And if you allow yourself to step into that awareness, you will remember just how much work you and I have done. Because I, Saint Germain, have lived a physical life. I know how challenging can it be, and yet I also know how incredibly sensual it is. And so again, I remind you, be sensual, find all of the experiences that you have, create experiences that are sensual. And I know some of you are in this odd thing called lockdown. Well, believe it or not, in my time as a physical being, we had no such thing. We had no such thing as lockdown. So I look at you and I ask you, why are you creating these lockdowns? Yes, I can joke because I am a non-physical being. And there are no limits for me. I can come here for a short amount of time. I manifest myself sometimes for a few days because when I want to be physical. And dear friends, this is what is waiting for you. This is what you are in training for. For these experiences as human being means that you will always be able to come here. And what do I mean by here? Here, I mean into that part of yourself that knows the physicality, into that part of yourself that was physical. And you will always have that at your command, at your disposal. So if you are out there, a great angel with wings and fluttering and going this way and that way with no boundaries, as we do that, and then you realize, I need something more substantial today, so I'm going to be physical for a while. And you focus on the part of you that knows the physicality, and voila, there you are. There is no need to be born again of a mother or a father. You see, I know that for some of the people, this is a huge taboo because they're so invested in the goddesses and the gods and the twin souls and all sorts of things. Yes, it's fun to play for a while. But if you want freedom, real freedom, then you are more like me. Because I am non-physical and I can be physical, but I am not stuck in physicality. And I know, I hear some of you saying, but dear Saint Germain, now that I'm a master, finally, I would be able to choose my parents. I would be able to choose where I get born. I would choose this great, abundant life, sensual, from the childhood to the old age. I would choose now because now I can. Why would I not be born again? And dear friends, don't worry about any of these things. You will choose what you want to choose when that time of choice comes, which is not today, not today. That time of choice, at that time of choice, you have all the buffet in front of you of different choices, of different experiences. That's the whole point. So do not fret and do not waste time on some kind of future experiences and asking yourself, oh no, what about this? What about that? Because, dear friends, where are you supposed to be? In the now moment, in that precious now moment. Because it is in that now moment that that veil disappears and all of a sudden you can touch, not with your hands, but with your feelings that go into all the different spaces. And you touch beings like me, and you become aware of me, and you become aware of all of your other friends, and you become aware, even more importantly than that, you become aware of you, the I am that you are. You become aware of all this incredible being that you are. So this is what is waiting for you in that now moment. So let's breathe, dear friends. Breathe yourself into life, breathe yourself into communing with earth, because you can breathe yourself and feel yourself as earth. There's this floating that is flying through this space, and feel her. Feel the joy as she's flying through the Milky Way. You see all of these kind of experiences are available to you, and feel how you all of a sudden become so juicily, so sensually earthy as you feel her, as she's inviting you, as she's caressing you with her winds and the sounds and the smells and the scents and the colors and the sweetnesses of all that she has to offer. For she is here with you as you. She wants to play with you. She wants someone to love her, someone to look at her through the eyes of love, someone to look and touch her with love. Every leaf, every human being that you meet, you can touch. And your eyes, when you look with your eyes with love, it's a sense, and you can touch others, and you can touch everything, and everything blossoms. When you do that, try that next time when you're walking around. Touch people with your love that radiates through your eyes. With the sound of your voice, you carry that love. When you feel the radiance of your being, when you feel yourself as that incredible being that you are, sensual, alive, blossoming, enjoying, experiencing. When you feel yourself who you really are, you have said goodbye to that illusion. You have said goodbye to the dream, and you have become real. Real in this physicality, real within your life, real and present and joyful and alive and sensual, here to experience all that you came to experience, all that can be experienced, and things that you haven't even allowed yourself to imagine yet. But dear ones, dear friends, as Saint Germain, I was bold, I was fearless. I allowed myself to live. I allowed myself all the sensual delights of the times when I was physical. And I invite you to do the same. To do the same. Don't be small anymore. Don't pretend you are small. Don't pretend that you can't. Don't pretend that you are a victim. Step out of that. And Alexis is saying that our dear Tania has joined us. And so I, as Saint Germain, I will continue to be very present with you. Call upon me. And now, okay, so let's bring our dear Tania in. Hello, dear Tania. Can you hear me? Hello. Hello, just one sec. Oh, where are you? Oh, just one sec. I'm not too panelists. All right, let's see if we can see you as well.
Hello, hello.
Hello. All right. Oh, wonderful. I